What's up traders? In today's video, we will be performing a market forecast on EUR/USD using smart money concepts. So stay tuned. Now, this forecast is going to be for the week starting Monday, July 31st and ending Friday, August the 4th. I'm uploading this video on Sunday the 30th of July. The main time frames that we're going to be focusing on are going to be the weekly, the daily, and the 4-hour time frames. And this is so that this particular forecast is something that you guys can actually reference throughout the course of the week. Your 4-hour time frame is going to give you that initial feel of what price is likely to do at the start of the week, and then as the week progresses you can refer back to the daily analysis to give you guys a feel of what price may be doing. So we're going to start off here on the weekly time frame, and as you guys can see, we are obviously trading within this bearish weekly range. We've had our major break of structure take place in here. Price action is currently in a pullback phase within this weekly range, and what is very significant about what we're seeing on the weekly time frame is that from an internal structure point of view, we've recently seen this break of structure to the upside. This suggests to us that the pullback phase is still taking place, and there is now potential for this particular pullback phase to continue even deeper into this range, potentially targeting this weekly supply zone, or at an extreme this weekly supply zone. I would prefer to see a mitigation of this extreme weekly supply zone purely because it is a fresh zone as opposed to this supply zone in here, which has already been tapped into, right? But price can definitely go back in and retest that area before rolling over. Now, if we focus in on price action just a little bit closer, you'll see that after that internal break of structure to the upside, we've gotten a pullback and price action is now interacting with a weekly demand zone. This weekly demand zone is very significant because if we are to see that deeper pullback continue, realistically it will originate from this demand zone. Obviously, if this demand zone fails, then we could be seeing this pullback phase ending and price action potentially rolling over to target our weekly week low overall, but initially it would be looking to target at least this weekly demand. Now, realistically, the continuation phase will only be confirmed when our internal structure switches bearish. And the point at which that internal structure will switch bearish at present is going to be after price action violates this low in here. You can see that this is our internal break of structure to the upside. It originated from this particular low, which means that essentially we have an internal range that looks like this, which is obviously a bullish range. If this low then gets violated, we will then essentially have confirmation that our internal structure has shifted bearish and that we now have essentially the start of that continuation phase. There is the possibility that because of the trendline liquidity that we see present in here, that price action could temporarily switch bearish to facilitate the mitigation of this demand zone before shooting back up to target either the extreme or something like this. But realistically, once this low is violated, we can anticipate price action to look and target that weekly week low, right? So at the moment for our weekly time frame, we are in this pullback phase. The recent break of structure to the upside suggests that the pullback phase is still continuing. We are currently interacting with a weekly demand zone that has potential to push that pullback phase a little bit deeper into the range. Now, if we drop down to the daily time frame, you'll see that the internal break of structure visible on the weekly time frame is a full-on structure break on the daily time frame in here, and you'll notice that we now have an established daily bullish range that price action is currently trading within. Price action is experiencing the pullback phase of this particular daily range, and you can see that here we have that weekly demand zone that price action has just tapped into. So at the moment, the current objective of this range is for price action to go ahead and target the daily week high. Now you can see that during the pullback phase, we had an initial reaction to this daily demand zone in here. It wasn't well priced. Price action pulled back and then rolled over to continue the pullback phase, in the process creating this daily supply zone in here. So a couple of things can happen at this point in time. Now we have tapped into a weekly demand zone, but we have this daily demand zone that sits at the extreme of this weekly zone that price action is likely going to target before giving us that continuation. The reason I like this demand zone is because not only does it chain off of this particular demand zone, but we also had a liquidity sweep before the demand zone formed, right? So this is a very good zone for us to anticipate that daily bullish continuation to potentially originate from. However, the presence of this daily supply zone means that we could potentially see a quick internal pullback at the start of the week to mitigate this supply zone before price action rolls over to tap into daily demand, before then giving us the bullish continuation. Obviously, price action could easily, from where it is now, just continue down lower, tap into the zone, and if this zone holds, it could then push up higher. In that case, this supply zone will then just become a potential reaction point before price action continues with what then would be a potential bullish continuation phase. So at the moment, the daily time frame, we are hovering at the equilibrium of our daily bullish range, and we have tapped into that weekly demand zone, as we can see. But ideally, we would like to see a mitigation of this demand zone before price action rolls over. Below this demand zone, we don't have any other unmitigated zones that price action could potentially look to mitigate or look to target. So if this demand zone does break down, then it would become a case of having to focus on our internal structure, and we'd have to look for that internal structure down here to give us that shift to a bullish market state before we can then regard the continuation phase as having begun. So the daily time frame is currently pointing bullish overall. We are in that pullback phase. This is the main area that we want to focus on. And then finally, when we drop down to our 4-hour time frame, you'll notice that the 4-hour time frame is currently also pointing bullish overall. You'll notice that during our last market forecast video, we're trading at this particular point in here when price action was still pointing bearish, right? This was our last relevant break of structure, and we knew that a violation of this 4-hour strong high would be necessary to facilitate that bullish continuation that we were anticipating. So the 4-hour time frame has now switched bullish in order to facilitate daily bullishness. That daily bullishness forms part of a weekly pullback, and now we can see this pullback that price is currently in a lot clearer. All right, the interesting thing with this particular internal structure on the 4-hour time frame is that we were pointing bearish internally up until price action went ahead and mitigated this 4-hour demand zone. Then we switched bullish from an internal point of view, which was an early indication that price action was now potentially ready to go ahead and target the 4-hour week high. However, no sooner after that internal structure switched bullish did we switch back to bearish again. Now, this is definitely something that will happen when trading supply and demand, where your structure will essentially shift bullish before shifting bearish again very quickly. You can see that on this occasion, that switch back to bearishness was facilitated by a high impact news event. It actually ended up facilitating a mitigation of a 4-hour demand zone that sat below this 4-hour in here. Now, just very quickly, you'll notice that with this demand zone, I have it marked out as this internal range in here. Price action only ended up interacting with the top third of that range, which could have been refined to this inside bar candle in here, but valid demand zone in here that was well priced. So this definitely was a zone that had the potential to push price action a bit higher. However, high impact news event pushes price down lower, and now we've seen, okay, a mitigation of another well-priced 4-hour demand zone that is again another internal range. So at the moment, our internal structure is pointing bearish. You can see that our last break is in here, which means that this is currently the bearish internal range that we're playing within. Realistically, the current objective of this particular 4-hour range is for price action to go ahead and violate the 4-hour week high. But that will only truly be confirmed, the start of that will only truly be confirmed after price action goes ahead and violates the internal high. So there is a possibility that where price action is now, we trade up a bit higher, mitigate this 4-hour supply zone that was created after price action broke above this internal high, right? So we could see a mitigation of this supply zone, roll over to create a new internal break of structure, and then we will obviously have a new internal high. So the start of the bullish continuation phase that will look to target the 4-hour week high will only be confirmed when price action violates the internal high, wherever that internal high is. At the moment, it is this high in here, but it could easily be somewhere further down, depending on how price moves going into this particular week. We do have these wicks in here that price action has slightly tapped into, and this could already now be the start of the next internal impulsive phase to the downside. But if this breaks down, this would be that next area. And then from there, either we see price action trade down lower, or we see a short-term reaction before price action potentially switches bullish. Now, what you'll notice as well is that our daily demand zone that sits at the extreme of the weekly demand zone that we spoke about, right, sits in here. So there is potential that this internal price action is going to continue trading bearish in order to facilitate potentially this demand zone in here. So even though we don't have any 4-hour demand zones that haven't been mitigated here, we do have this daily demand zone that price action could potentially target. Obviously, there is every chance that price action goes ahead and violates the 4-hour strong low. When that takes place, that will be an initial indication that price is potentially going to look to violate the daily strong low. And if the daily strong low is violated, that will then mean that our weekly time frame would have essentially ended the pullback phase and would now look to continue with that bearish continuation phase. So very interesting stuff that we're seeing here on Euro USD. The price action has been very clean over the past couple of weeks. Interested to see what's going to happen next. If you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure that you give it a like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. And if you are a beginner looking for some guidance, feel free to check out the link in the description below to join up with my mentorship. As always, I appreciate you guys so much watching. I'll see you in the next one.